Call meeting to order. Today is October 14th, 2013. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Barry?
Here.
Aaron? Meyer? Here. Caprows?
Here.
Coleman?
Here.
Whalen?
Here. And the minutes of the September 9th meeting. Any additions, corrections, deletions? Is that to September 23rd meeting? Any additions, corrections, deletions? That is there a motion?
So second.
Motion on the floor and there's a second. Any questions to the motion? Roll call.
Barry?
Yes.
Meyer? Yes. Caprows?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
Whalen?
Yes.
Okay, clerk's report.
The only thing I have is the total tax income received since the last meeting, $298,182.46. And that includes 2 months worth of sales tax payments, so that's why those numbers are so high.
Any questions? Okay, recognition of audience, Lisa Campbell, the Relay for Life. Lisa, call you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm the marketing director for Tractors for a Cure, and I wanted to come and address the board on behalf of, well, first of all, Tractors for a Cure, and make the announcement, which has already been in the paper, that at our event that we hold here in Beecher annually at Fireman's Park, we raised $30,070, and we wanted to officially thank the village board, all the trustees, the police and fire departments, the citizens, the local businesses, everybody for supporting Tractors for a Cure. We're already looking at next July 12th, 2014, as our tentative date. We're still waiting on approval of Fireman's Park, but I think we've got that worked out. But the other reason I'm here is because the money that we raise at Tractors for a Cure, as most of you know, is going to the American Cancer Society. It goes through the channel of the Piatone Beecher Money Relay for Life. We presented a check to them in July of this year, 2013, for what we raised. Now, becoming a part of Tractors for a Cure, as I've been now for over a year, I'm now on the Relay for Life Planning Committee. Our planning meeting addressed the issue that the American Cancer Society is a little disappointed in 2 villages, Beecher, where I've lived for 9 years, and the village of Monique. So Mr. Mayor was kind enough to let me come and speak to you all about asking, first of all, for your support for Tractors, which I know is continued and ongoing. And second of all, if we could possibly get a little more participation, I just wanted to throw it out there, from not only the village board members, but we were looking toward possibly the police and fire department becoming involved, because the Relay for Life is going to be dedicated to heroes of cancer survivors, caregivers, but also a big focus of Relay for Life will be on first responders and the service that they provide for our communities. So I know that, after speaking with the chief briefly, has to go to those boards in depth for discussion. But the other things I wanted to announce were Tractors for a Cure is having its first annual winter benefit. We've never done that before. The date has been set for February 8th, and it will be a Valentine's dance. Details will be announced in the paper shortly. However, it's called Open Your Heart, Be a Part. We'd like to ask for the village's support on that. And the other thing I would like to know is, if we could get your help, either in planning sessions, not in a public forum, for suggestions on how we might better get our business community involved, maybe more citizens, and possibly get our own separate first responder Relay for Life fundraising team. And those were the only issues I had. Just basically a feel-good meeting, announce our winter fundraiser, and thank you again for all the cooperation that we've had from the village board.
Questions? Do you know where your the Valentine's is going to be held?
You know, tentatively it will be in Piatone, but we don't know yet.
That's what you
It's still in the planning. Yes, I think so.
It's not finalized yet.
No, nothing's been finalized.
And I have somebody whispering in my ear saying we have a conflict that night because that might be the past commander's dinner that night.
The first Saturday in February. That's a past marriage.
Yeah.
No, is February 1st though Saturday? That would be the first Saturday, would be February 1st, would it not?
All right, we're looking. Okay. We may have a conflict, we may not.
That's fine, just so you have it on your calendars, and we can certainly discuss it in our planning meetings at a later time.
And when we, will certainly discuss on what we can do to help you in the future as far as the Relay for Life. I had always thought that through the schools that we participated in it. Am I wrong or right, or talking off the top of my head? Or?
I attended this year.
I think about 5 years ago they were doing something like that, but I don't recall if they've been in
I
it.
thought there was always a walk or a
The
run.
school does do a walk every year.
They weren't there this year that I saw it. Now, this was my first year
This was,
attending.
yeah, this year they did eat.
Yeah, so this is my first year.
Okay, all right, we'll investigate. And we'll,
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the audience that wishes to address the board? Please have your name, sir, and your address.
I'm Gordon Wilson, most of you know who I am. I live here, my wife and I live at 925 Hodges Street. And I just want to say thank you to the current board and the trustees and to all your predecessors. From the standpoint of my knowledge of what goes on here in the village, I think you've all always done a great job. One of the things that, I don't have the exact numbers in mind, but one of the things that apparently you've done almost every year is pass a balanced budget. And I applaud you for that. I hope that we will never do what the state of Illinois and the federal government does and start spending money you don't have. So that was pretty much all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming and telling us that. Thank you. Sometimes when we have someone come before us, we say, oh, now what? Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Anyone else? Okay, reports of the commissions, Beautification Commission, Trustee Arndt, and anybody else? Yeah, yes, I was. Bottom line, at the house walk, there was a planning session on that, which would be December 1st. The information will be coming out in the future. I think they have, don't quote me on this, I believe the number was teetering on 10 or 11 participants in the house walk. So that's the report on that. 4th of July Commission, Trustee Coleman.
Yeah, the 4th of July Commission, we'd like to consider a motion approving the professional service agreements with Mad Bomber Productions in the amount of $28,500 for a 2014 fireworks display. Bob, anything you want to add to
Yeah,
that?
the vote was, this is a change, this is a new fireworks vendor. There's a lot of deliberation on the part of the commission. We've had Melrose since we took over the fireworks, actually after the first year. But due to the cost increase of 17%, the commission decided to take another bid, and they decided to go with the other bid. It's the same amount of money we spent this year, and the show looks just as spectacular. We don't have to pay an extra 17%. And the vote was 11-1 because there were a lot of people concerned about changing the vendor, but they feel that there is a need.
Okay, any questions, comments? This time I'd like to make a motion to approve an agreement with Mad Bomber Productions in the amount of $28,500 for the 2014 fireworks display.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Any questions to the motion? If not, roll call.
Bailey?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
Capros?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Kern?
Yes.
That's all I have, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Nelson would like to give the village board a briefing on the results of this year's 4th of July, as the commission always promises.
Oh, yeah, step forward.
Well, I read that, I'm going to do this. We have about a dozen pages or so buried in your agenda packet. I won't go through those in detail, but it's everything that you ever wanted to know about the finances of the 4th of July event. And just a couple of things I'll point out. This year, it was the best year we've ever had. We again, almost $176,000 during the event, which is the, let's say, the highest we ever had. The next highest was in 2009, which was about 20,000 below that. Then the net before park expenses were right at $40,000. And there's one year that was higher, and that was 2006. They were about $1,600 higher on the net. The beer sponsors, bingo, those areas, had the highest net ever, and we've been doing this for 13 years, although it's about 87 years in existence. The village has been running for 13 years. Those are, those numbers you can actually see there. And then the net after park expenses was $28,000, and that's just about $30,000 better than last year because we had about a $2,000 loss last year after the money we spent in the park. We have a little friendly competition between some of the committees or subcommittees. You know, beer card sponsors usually are battling for the highest gross and the highest net. And beer was high in gross, car was second, and beer was also high in net, with sponsors being second. If you take a look at, you know, this page, it is a summary of all 13 years by stand or committee, the income and the expense, so you can see the trends. Which ones are going up, which ones are going not up as fast, and also how the expenses compare. If you see in the left-hand column, the 2001 is the top one, 2001-5. What that -5 means, it was 5 days, as opposed to the next one, 2002, was 4 days. So a little 4 out there means that's the number of days that the event took place. Then the right-hand column is the total net for that year. And if you go to the page that looks like this, the horizontal page, the nice printing, this gives us the 2010, 2011, and 2012 actual, and also 2013 actual to year-to-date, compared with the budget. And there you'll see the 176,000 that came in. And going down through the expenses, I won't go through all those, but there's about 4 pages here. And when you get to the bottom, or the 4th page of that report, we've really gotten extremely good at predicting our expenses. And it's because we keep pretty good data. And on the budgeted expenses was about $139,000, and we were within 2% of that. So it's extremely close for that large number to be that close on our expenses. And then the next report looks like this. We have 1 page for each year. Hopefully the first one will be for 2013. And this gives, by stand or committee, income, expenses, and net. And then next to the last column there, it says percent revenue, percent expenses, percent net. What that does, it gives by committee how much of our, what percent of our total income is generated by them, and also what percent of our total expenses are generated by them. So if you'll notice the top one, the beer, has 26% of our total income, and it was 20% of our total expenses. But if you go down to sponsors, sponsors were 15% of our total income, but only 3% of our total expenses, and so forth. One other point at the very bottom, that we have spent over $215,000 in the park today. So next year, we will pass $250,000 that this committee has spent in your park. Now, if you look these numbers over, have any questions, just give me a call or contact me, and I'll be happy to go into detail. But this is what I've explained what's here, and you can look it over when you have some time.
Nelson, have you tracked what's been spent per year by? You've got everything else in there. I mean, it seems like you've got everything but that. But have we tracked how much has been spent in the park after the 4th of July as a part of upgrading the park?
If you look toward the bottom, it says park improvements.
Yeah, I'm talking every year.
Yeah, but if you turn to the next page, you have 2012.
Okay.
And it goes all the way back to 2001.
Okay.
So that's where you would find it. And that's where the $215,000 $15,000 comes from us, total those numbers. So yes, it is there. So a lot of information here.
I have a question. Did pull tabs turn profitable?
The last page, there is a kind of a summary of, if you work with these numbers all the time, certain things jump out at you. So there's a few comments there, and one of them is we have a lot of fun with Bob throughout the festival, because they're, we have running tallies by hour, by day, and so forth. And pull tabs, which was Bob's area, every day was paying out more money than it was taking in. So we had a lot of fun with him, but it does look like that area made about $400.
I was contributing to the revenue of every other stand in the park.
Bob's contention is that they win the money there and they go to the other areas and spend it.
That is a true point.
But pull tab, I think it's fine to have it, but the way the numbers work, you're never going to make more than a few $100s, because the cost of the pull tabs, the 80% payout, then you have to pay taxes on it. There's only a narrow margin, so the most you can ever do is $300 or $400, $500 on that operation.
Well, we had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Pull tabs.
People enjoy it, especially when
Giving
they
away the money.
get the $250 winner. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Youth Commission, trustee Forrest.
October 18th is the trip to the haunted house for junior high kids. We will be leaving from the high school. We have buses set up and be taking all the kids that sign up to the haunted house in St. John. And then on October 26th, we have a new location for the trunk or treat. This year it will be at the Fireman's Park parking lot. And that's it.
We're going to vote. Trustee Williams?
We did not have a meeting last week. There were several members that couldn't make it, so we rescheduled it for the following week.
So it's Thursday.
Is it this Thursday?
I won't be able to make it.
You won't be there?
Grand Park.
Okay. So we have a meeting this coming Thursday, and that's it. We are sending out letters, trying to get money as far as contributions and so forth. So each member had 15 letters to send out. So those letters went out to out there, and then in those letters there were 5 more cards that those people can hand out. So it went 15 times 5. We're hoping that the exposure gets out there. So we're always looking and doing a fundraiser.
Thank you. Trustee Coleman?
Yeah,
Some awards to give out tonight?
yeah, Lieutenant Emerson, you wanna lead us in this venture here?
Zoom in on your notes. Anything but one. I can do that. I don't think we have a wide length camera anymore. Follow it for a while.
We've got 6 officers, 4 are here tonight. We awarded their TPO pin, Tactical Patrol Officer pin. It's training above and beyond what they would normally do as an officer for our agency. The sheet I'm giving you kind of explains what they've done. It coincides with continuing training the department, providing for response, an active killer situation in the schools and or one of the businesses here in town. But all the officers coming before you, they are rapid deployment trained, MACTAC, which is an urban situation, multiple subjects. They're all patrol rifle carriers. They've all certified with that. They all carry a rifle on duty. Self-aid buddy aid, which is a first aid program to take care of themselves so they can continue the fight if necessary, to provide self-aid buddy aid to another officer and or a citizen, civilian. And a patrol tactics end user course. This program comes to us from the Illinois Tactical Officers Association, which is a statewide organization. Jeff Chudwin, he's currently with Peatone, retired as the chief of Olympia Fields. He is the push behind this, the father of the program. Our department ourselves, we've been training in rapid deployment since 1998 when Mark DeSanto was the chief of police. So this is a continuation of what we've been doing to provide service to the community in case we do have some type of incidents such as Sandy Hook, December of last year. These officers, again, they completed the basic level, and what we've done is we thought it'd be appropriate to bring them out here, let them be recognized for their sacrifice, because, again, a lot of that training's been yelling at them, so they have to put up with that, and it's a lot of skills which they have to renew yearly, rifle, the rapid deployment. So we thought we'd bring them out, let the board recognize them, make an official presentation of their pin they get to wear on their uniform, plus their certificate from the ITOA.
Thank you, Lieutenant. At this time, we'd like to recognize Officer Roger Sibbel.
He's actually thinner than the chief on this.
Officer Jamie Hawkins. Officer Chris Hopper.
Hopper.
Officer Ryan Hopkins.
The two officers not here tonight that also earned the pin are Officer Jeff Young and Officer John Bossy. They had other commitments. I know John worked in Moni today, and I think Jeff was working late tonight. So there's 6 of them. Not to give them the credit they deserve. They just couldn't be with us tonight. We'll airbrush them into the photo later. So.
Yeah, I'd like to say congratulations to you and the good work that you're doing for our community. As you all know, what you've learned here may knock on our door at any time or any day. So congratulations. We're proud of you.
Yes, he's at the level of master TPO, which includes being a rapid deployment instructor, a tactical rifle instructor, a patrol tactics instructor, and also a self-aid buddy aid instructor. So he's at that level where he's able to instruct these courses, which he does. So we're fortunate to have him as a master level.
Good job. He's my friend.
Okay, and one more award that I'd like to present tonight, or we were presented with an award at the village as far as a new staff member. And Donna Rooney is in the audience. Her title is technically new building technician for the village, and I think staff would agree in the office that we were awarded with a excellent person, and we appreciate the fact that you're here. This is Donna.
I'm really happy to be here with you.
Thank you, and we appreciate the fact that you are here. Okay, committee reports, finance and administration.
Bob, you want to just go to the audit? If you want to run away, so we got you on. Are you ready?
I'm ready whenever you guys are. I am Marcy Holberg, another Marcy. Nice to know you. I'm here this year. I come up last year with Kurt Dykstra. Kurt has been doing the audit for you guys for our firm for a number of years, and he is retired now, so he's enjoying life a little bit. He left me, he says, "Oh, you're going to Beecher tonight, tell them hi." So hello from Kurt. Want to cover the audit report with you. You should have that in your package. I know finance, Bob said he went over it with finance committee prior to tonight, so you've had a chance to look through that. Just want to take a few minutes and touch on a few things. On page 1 of the report is the independent auditor's report. If you compared it to last year, it would look different. Our standards changed and the way the report is set up, it essentially says the same thing, it just breaks down so it's very clear what management's responsibility is for the audit versus the auditors. There was confusion, a lot of people think the audit report is all ours, and we put together numbers and make decisions and all that. In reality, the only thing we have any control over is the audit report itself, the first 2 pages. The rest of the report is actually the villages, working with numbers that you guys have, putting together, we do put together the disclosures, but you are responsible for them. So it just sets that up, so it is a little bit different report, look, but essentially it's the same thing. You did get an unqualified report, which is the highest type of report that the village could receive, so it is good. The one thing that is in here on page 2, the second paragraph indicates that you do not have any you don't present management discussion and analysis, which the Government Auditing Standards Board says you can present. It's not a requirement. Our audit opinion does not change. What that gives is the reader some additional insight to what is happening in the village, particularly focusing on future events, any economic conditions that may change in the future, that type of thing. But it's essentially just condensing a lot of this into a few pages and then giving some narrative. But you guys do not present that, that's okay. Like I said, our opinion does not change. We just do need to point out to the reader that you don't present that so that they don't think it's missing. If you go to page 3, that is your Exhibit A. It's a snapshot of where the village was on April 30th. Just want to cover a couple things there. We'll cover a little bit more of the same information a little bit later. But in the governmental activities column, that is all of your funds except for the water, sewer, and refuse funds. Just want to point out a couple things there. If you look at your assets, not including the capital assets, which are your property, your land, equipment, that type of thing, but the rest of the assets of the governmental activities, as of April 30th, was about 2.8 million. Last year, that number would have been 2.6, so your assets did go up in the governmental activities about $200,000. Your liabilities in those same areas this year were 2.3, and you were about 2.4 last year. So overall, governmental activities went up about $300,000 to the good. If you go to the next page, we're going to touch on that just a little bit here. This is where you were for the year. It's your income and expenses for the year for the governmental activities and the water, sewer, and refuse. In there, I just want to point out a couple of things. Your governmental activities expenses decreased slightly from last year. Last year, those expenses were $3,031,000. I'm sorry, this year they were $3,031,000. That first column, last year they were $3,077,000. So they did decrease by about 1.5%, which is nice to see. You got complimented earlier by one of your residents on keeping things, within budgets and passing balanced budgets. We don't see a lot of decreases in expenses by governmental units, so it was nice to see that. Your water, sewer, refuse expenses did increase about 2% from last year. Your water, sewer, refuse charges for services did increase about 6%, so it covered those increased expenses there. Towards the bottom shows your general revenues, which are all of your revenues that cover the expenses that are not paid for by charges for services from the residents. The one nice thing there is the state income tax increased 32%. The state is finally catching up somewhat on what they're paying you, plus the economy, as funny as it may seem, is coming back a bit, that the income taxes are going up, and therefore they're able to pass through a little bit more. You received $476,000 in state income taxes this year. Last year that number was $362,000. Your replacement tax also increased. The replacement tax is essentially the corporate income tax, and that increased 11%. So you were at 291,000 there this year compared to 261,000 last year. So it was nice to see those couple of increases. If you flip back to page 9, there's some information on the water sewer. Overall, the water and sewer did have a loss of $106,000. Your refuse had a net income before some transfers. They transferred some money out of about $35,000. On the previous page, you'll see that on page 9, your current assets in your water and sewer fund are just over $1 million. You've got $1.6 million in liabilities. So you do have liabilities larger than the current assets, but those liabilities are long-term in the bonds and that. So you got some time to pay that off. You did pay down $329,000 in debt in the water and sewer funds this year. On page 24, the footnotes are going to be for your reading pleasure. If you'd like to read through that, it just gives a lot of information about the village. But on page 24, there is the general fund budget to actual. Couple things there. We talked about the sales tax. The state income tax going up. You budgeted $329,000 and received $430,000, so that was over budget. The one large number that was under budget was your property taxes. Budgeted $933,000 and you received $853,000. So that was offset by those state income taxes going up. But those were your two large significant items compared to budget that were different. On page 26, just one thing to point out in the future. I don't know if you guys have been hearing about the IMRF and the unfunded liability and what they're going to require you to do, but in 2 years, accounting standards are going to require you, the fourth column there, headed unfunded AAL, $615,000. That is what is projected by IMRF, by their actuaries, that as of 12/31/12, your assets less or projected liability, they're saying you would owe $615,000 into the fund at that point in time to break even with what the projected liability is. Standards are going to require you in 2 years to pick up that $615,000 as a liability on your financial statements. So that will be a shift in 2 years. Who knows what that number will be at that point in time. IMRF is not in bad shape, so hopefully that number, you guys, you're paying what is the required amount, you're not falling behind. You had some choices a few years back that you could pay a lower amount or pay the required amount. So you're in pretty good shape that way, but that number will get reported on the financial statements in 2 years.
As a liability.
As a liability.
Not that you have to pay it.
Right, you don't have to pay it right away, but it's going to be reported because that number for some entities is quite large and would actually wipe out any net position that they have. Like I said, you guys are not in that position, but it will cause the village to look like they are in a worse position than they are today, and we had to pick that up. So the bonding companies all understand that, so hopefully it won't affect bond ratings or anything. Particularly, like I said, with you guys, you're strong financially, so that will be a hit, obviously, but it won't cause
Those that are in the
major
downstate
problems.
pension funds will have a much larger number than
Yes.
IMI.
Yes, and TRS, if you were a school district, they can't even tell you what that number is going to be, so. I know Bob said that you guys covered, we did have a recommendation letter to the village. He said you covered that with the finance committee. If there are questions with that, certainly let us know. The annual financial report needs to be filed with the state of Illinois. I told Bob, unfortunately, the state website is down. Has been up and down for the last couple of weeks, so we're having a hard time getting on to get that done. As soon as we get that done, they can print it. We actually got it done today, but couldn't print it because of the state website. We'll get that to you for review and signature, then we send that through for you. And otherwise, I would just like to thank you. With me being new in, I came up with Kurt last year to do the work. Jessica and I came up this year, got in and out. Thank you, Jeanette and Bob, for your help. And if there's any questions, I can try to answer them. Yes?
If you go to page 16,
Okay?
on the very bottom, the last paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
there's an error in your documentation.
Go.
After the last audit that was done by your group,
Okay?
there was a debate if it was a state mandate to have the village funds secured or kept collateralized.
Correct.
And there was a debate back and forth if it needed to be, after we found that it was not required by state law,
Correct.
we passed an ordinance to make sure that was a mandate of the village.
Okay.
This states that there's no policy set forth. There was.
Okay, there is now.
It was after that audit where the debate
Okay.
came up
Okay.
that we determined that if it's not a state mandate, we'll make it a village ordinance, and that's
Okay.
what it is. So we
Okay.
do have a policy in place.
Okay.
We just have to provide it to you.
Yes, so if you want to get that, I can get that change made before this goes to the state and that, so, thank you. Everything is collateralized, so that is not a problem, but.
I'm surprised Bob didn't catch that one either.
You know,
I had a whole day to review this thing.
I don't know if we did it by motion, or did we do it by
Actually,
word?
I remember it.
We did
I
an
don't
ordinance.
know if we passed
The
something.
first thing when it came up, it was a debate between your group, even Kurt wasn't even sure. You were pretty much, no, I don't think it's in there. Kurt was kind of on the fence, and Bob was saying he thought it was. So, after you guys looked into it, Bob looked into it, Bob's like, it's not state mandate. So, at the following board meeting, I told Bob, if it's not, then make an ordinance. Because we're doing that anyways, it's kind of the direction,
Right,
it's
and
a
that's what I
policy,
said.
unwritten policy at the time.
You're covered, okay, so we just need to change that wording a bit, yeah. The state just requires prudent man
Right.
investing in that type of thing, so, okay, we'll get that taken care of then.
Yeah, I don't know if we did it by ordinance or by motion.
It was, I think it was an ordinance.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back to April, May. It was after we had this, we went through
That
this.
would've been last-
Would have been last,
Yeah, so October,
November, December.
I don't remember being a motion when I was reading through the minutes, so it may have been an ordinance. So,
I remember.
take a look at that,
I couldn't tell you the date.
but probably November.
It would have been November, December, because it was shortly after we had this,
Had this report.
and we had looked into it in more detail.
Okay.
But I swear, I want to say it was an ordinance, Bob. I'll see if I can go back to my records too.
It could be that we authorized drafting it and then it fell through the cracks.
No, I think we passed it.
We passed it.
You have
I
one.
will talk with you tomorrow, Wednesday.
Any other questions of the auditor? Okay, make a motion accepting the auditor's report for the fiscal year 2012 to 2013.
Second.
Motion on the floor and a second. Any questions to the motion? Roll call.
Cleary?
Yes?
Myers?
Yes.
Rouse?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go to the top of my list. Kim, you ready?
Sure. Looks like we've got buried in our many numbers document this time, my treasurer's report. If we flip to the page of the village accounts, it was a good month for the village, it traditionally is. We'll look and see on our chart later, this is our high point of our account revenue. It's tax season, it's water bills coming in, and so what we've seen is almost a $400,000 increase in our accounts from last month, and that's good for the village because we're following the good part of the trend, which is having our good month. On the back of that page, what I've done here, instead of just listing our expenses, I tried to summarize the activity for the month for the village accounts. So this corresponds to the $400,000 increase that we just talked about.
And really what it is a generalized listing of our income and our expenses by the categories that we assign to them when we either write checks or when we get income. As you skip down the income, you see that primarily we're looking at our refuse collections, our tax collections, the water bill income, and the fuel payments that are made as part of that joint fuel program we belong to. And that total at $679,000 of income. And under the expenses, generally speaking, we have a couple of main categories. Once again, we have the bills that you guys approve at the board, which you'll be approving another set of bills. And then we have mostly payroll-related other expenses, which go under the health insurance, the general, the payroll taxes themselves. And so I think what you'll be able to see here as we do this monthly is really what the village looks at on a monthly basis. You've got X amount of income and a certain amount of expenses. And I'm hoping that'll give you a feel for how the village is operating monthly. And then finally, the graph page. And you can see what I just described, which is that this is a peak time for us as far as total account balances. And it looks like a year ago was a peak time again, so we're following our trend. Any questions from anyone?
I have one, Kim. If we pay a bill on, let's say, the youth commission account, where does that show up on?
Okay, this will not show up there.
Oh, no.
This is village, because really, that's not our money. I could report that to you if you're interested in the commissions, but the 4th of July is not in there. The beautification is really the front page set of accounts, which is general O&M, infrastructure, and the like that are our village operating accounts. So if the group would like, in addition,
We see what goes up and down with the special accounts on the previous
Yeah,
page.
but I believe we are obligated by statute to approve all bills on the village regardless. I think we have to have a list of all the commission bills and we have to vote on them.
I think just to correct it, it is village money, it's just not tax dollars.
well,
So again, it's go back to
I just
that.
don't want to get in trouble with the auditor if we're not, because I remember we had to, 2 or 3 years ago, Nelson, remember that list you had to give us of all the transactions? We had to vote on them?
No, that's because Nelson wanted us to understand what money he was dealing with. It's in question if the commissions are something, since it's kind of like your comment, it's a pass-through. We're really not in control of that. The commissions are making their funds on their own. It's granted they're under the village's responsibility, because if they go belly up, it's still they're still ours. But the money that they're developing is internal, whether they're getting grants from somebody or however that is, it's not tax dollars accrued by the village. So Nelson wanted to make sure that we saw everything lined all the way through. And that's why we saw those 3 pages of village items
I
and then the
believe the
commissions.
ordinance that we're working on requires that this board approve those expenditures. Am I correct?
I'm not sure. That was my desire, my plan.
We never had that before. And it was never in the treasurer's portion of the ordinance, which you're working on right now.
well, there's no issue presented if you want to present it. There isn't. If you feel. So,
I mean, if they're auditing those books, then you better look at the bills, that's all I can say.
Let me
Because
suggest,
at the end of the day, you're liable.
Oh, yeah, because the commissions are still under the village's responsibility.
On 4th of July, all of them.
what harm would it be for us to know it, as opposed to the harm would be if we do not know it?
It's just more paper. That's all it is.
Well, Bob kills the trees 20 times a week.
I know.
So, no, my point is that there's no harm in reporting it, so why not in the discussions within the ordinance that we're going to do, discuss it there? And
I think what Kim's trying to do is simplify this, because there's so much data that you get, you can't comprehend it. He's trying to simplify it for you.
But I think this has already been rehashed before, where we we discussed it at some level before and said we wanted to see it. So what I'm saying is that when, knowing that now, Kim, you can go back, you can discuss that with the ordinance and then present it. Is what I'm saying.
Or you just provide it all the time.
Provide it all the time.
That's fine, that's fine. Like I said, the intent was trying to put a logical simplification on what's happening, so a simple reader could just go through it and understand. So.
Yeah, it's very much appreciated. It's like I say, it's just, since we have something going on, I think we can figure it out. I think there's no harm in reporting, so I think that's what we should do. My suggestion anyways.
Anything else?
Thanks, Kim. So I make a motion approving the treasurer's report for the, and the report of financial activity for the prior month.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor, and there's a second. Any questions to the motion? Roll call.
Whalen?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
Caprows?
Yes.
Meyer? Yes. Cleary?
Yes. Variance reports were also provided for the previous month for our review. The bills were also provided to us under separate covering and also are in front of us for our review. We pretty much, Bob, you're not adding any additional bills lately.
Do, but they were Friday, they're done.
Yeah. Any questions of the bills? I make a motion approving the bills, a total of $191,823.43.
Second.
Motion on the floor, and there's a second. Any questions to the motion? Roll call.
Cleary?
Yes.
Meyer? Yes. Caprows?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
Whalen?
Yes.
The next item on our list is concerning a line item transfer for the fiscal year 2013-2014, covering expenses of the previous approved motions of the board. Some of these include valve turning, booster station items, which would be VFDs, that's still under debate, and also hiring of Jim Pradle. Also the warning siren that was done under the, by the chief that failed in the village, and also covered the cost of the water and sewer master plan. A little background on the booster station. VFDs, I've had discussions with Buddy. He's going to look at getting us a detailed budget for doing the booster station VFDs. This would be an all-in cost instead of just the cost of the VFDs, so that the board has a general idea of the expected cost to implement those. And he's going to pursue getting us a planned schedule for doing valve turning throughout the village over a duration, so it won't be one solid hit. We've been doing valve turning in the newer subdivisions. It's in the older section of town that we've been negligent. We need to get those moving forward. So the plan right now is to, for the funds that have been allocated for use by the Public Works Superintendent, he's going to determine what is going to be the best use of those funds, and it will be valve turning over the next few weeks and moving forward. So I make a motion authorizing line item transfer in the fiscal year 2013-2014 budget, cover the expenses of the previously approved expenses by the village board.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and second. Just to clarify, this will be a resolution, and it's 2013-18.
I want to point something out to the board. All of the items on here we've already voted on, with the exception of the last one. That is $10,838 of new money that we're asking for this code enforcement program. It's a pilot program to get us through the year. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. I presented that also to the finance committee.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call.
Whalen?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
Caprows?
Yes.
Meyer? Yes. Cleary?
Yes. The treasurer's ordinance is being updated with the treasurer and deputy treasurer. It's still an active point. We just need to get it resolved and clean that portion up. Comcast has provided the village an update on substantial changes that are going to occur November 5th, which is any kind of input to your TV set for local channels is now going to be scrambled, and you're going to need a cable box to be able to see those. The Finance Committee had met to discuss several issues. This is more of an update to let you guys know what's going on. There's also a document in the board packet after the last, the resolution that was in there concerning the finance for some of the uses of the money that we had talked about before. And also, the other item that came up was concerning the possible payoff of some of the additional work that needs to be done in the village. We went from discussions about the water and sewer debt services, discussions about the booster station loan. We've also talked about what would be the expected time to rehab the sewage treatment plant, and also how we would try to pay for this, which could include a 0.5% sales tax increase, which would have to be approved by referendum. Again, these were all talking points. We want the village to be aware of some of these issues that had taken place, and this is more of an awareness point. Probably want anything else? That ends our report.
Thank you. I'd like to skip going to item C3. We trustee Aaron's committee, but Scott is here to take that for her. We'd like to do the introduction now. I believe Mr. Hoffman has arrived at it, so we're going to expedite this a little bit.
Patiently waiting, huh? Well, we'd like to introduce Mike Hoffman from Tesca and Associates. He's a new village planner. Wanted to come to the meeting to introduce himself. He will be conducting a training session with the Planning and Zoning Commission on Tuesday, October 29th, and the village board members are invited. So if you want to take over from there?
Sure, I'll be brief. But Mike Hoffman with Tesca Associates. We are a community planning and landscape architecture firm. We've been doing work in this part of the world for the last 35 years or so. I've been with the firm for about 23 years. I'm a vice president, third owner of the company. We are planners and landscape architects. We do probably 65% of our work is for municipal governments. We also do some private development work, particularly landscape architectural, site planning, and land planning work. We think that really helps our practice because we understand things from the development perspective and from the governmental perspective. We certainly will not be doing any private work in Beecher, and we'll exclude that from any potential conflicts, and so that will not be an issue. You will either see myself or Pete Aosi at your meetings. We work very closely together. We both worked out of our firm's Plainfield office, and we've been doing work together for the last 8 or so years. We've got a great relationship. We like to have both of us familiar with the community, so in case there is a conflict of a meeting or something that I might have, he could certainly be up and running and ready to fill in on a minute's notice. The types of work that we would do certainly would involve reviewing development projects for you. We are certainly capable of assisting in updating your comprehensive plan. We hope that might be coming up in the near future. We've done lots of zoning ordinance work and rewriting those kind of documents. So we're certainly capable of doing those kind of things. And we also do a lot of tax increment financing work. So that's another area that we might be able to assist if the village decides to go in that direction at some point in time. The last piece of type of work that we do typically is what we call special area planning. That would be looking at areas like a downtown or like a highway corridor or something like that, and looking at ways to improve those areas, make them better for economic development, just make them better parts of the community. So those are kind of the areas of practice that we have, as well as landscape architecture design and park planning work is also another piece of what we do. So excited about being here, look forward to working with you, and like it was already mentioned, we're planning on doing our first effort being a training session for the Planning Commission. There'll be kind of part presentation and part questions and answers with that. We've got a nice program that we've done before for other communities. I've actually been able to supplement that recently. We just added a new principal with the firm recently that has been doing planning training throughout the state through the American Planning Association. So I've got his PowerPoint too to kind of patch into mine. So I think it should be a good session coming up on the 29th.
We also discussed at the last PCC meeting where he was introduced that we have a session on tips. And the PCC wanted to know if the village board wanted to participate in that discussion, and that would be at our village board meeting, the first meeting in December. He would allocate a half hour to an hour of that meeting to talk tip. So we all understand it, and ask questions. He will tell us there's different kinds of tips, and I think it would be good training for both boards. But since you're invited to come to their meeting on the 29th, we thought it would be good to they would be invited to our meeting on December 9th or whatever that is. Is that something you guys would like to do? Yes. Okay. Last time we had that was Lou Vitillo, and that was a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
That was at the intergovernmental meeting.
Yes.
What are you gonna talk about at the planning and zoning meeting?
I'm kind of viewing it as a training session, how to run meetings, how to review projects, a little bit about your ordinance and how that works, the zoning ordinance works with the comprehensive plan, how those pieces fit together, as well as other planning tools that might be out there that you may not have today, but may want sometime in the future.
We've had a big turnover on the PZC. There's quite a few new members that never basically have trained. So it might be a
We've
good
never
idea.
trained anybody who's on planning and zoning.
It's
It's also
been-
you're appointed and away you go.
Yeah, we did have a training session
We
a
realized
long
that
time ago.
when we were
Yeah.
discussing this with Mr.
Yeah.
Hoffman, we realized that, we've missed the boat, that we said, asked them to do something, but don't give them any training on how to do it, so we picked up on what he had to offer.
Yeah, the days of giving the cop the gun and the badge and saying, go on patrol are gone. And that's true also with the planning commission.
Scott, I would ask you to do number 4 as well, as long as
Okay.
Mr. Hoffman.
All right. I'd like to make a motion authorizing the village president and clerk to sign an engagement agreement for professional services with Teska and Associates.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and second, just a comment. When we approved the appointment last month, there was no indication of whether or not you authorized us to sign the agreement, so that's why it's on tonight's agenda, rather than just simply following suit with it. Roll call.
Cleary.
Yes.
Meyer. Yes. Rose.
Yes.
Golden.
Yes.
Whalen.
Yes.
It's official. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Trustee Whalen, Public Buildings, Properties, Parks, and Recreation.
Okay, update on the draft ordinance for rules in village parks. I've been in contact with the village attorney. That's work in progress. He explained to me that he has several different communities that he can help with as far as kind of coming up with different ideas and so forth. So that's in the progress. Like the park campaign, the village newsletter is going to be going out maybe this coming weekend, right?
Yeah, the end of this week, beginning of next week.
And there'll be an article in the newsletter talking about Light the Park. We're also
Front
going,
page.
what's that?
Right on the front page.
Front page, okay. Need Light the Park. In the coming months, we're going to be sending out letters to potential corporate donors. Update on the Depot Museum building. The village president met with members of the Historical Society and several small building modification projects were discussed. The society was asked to put their ideas in writing with an estimated price, so the information can be forwarded to the buildings committee for review. Did you want to?
Just, basically, they have some concerns. Obviously, they're out of space, number one, and they have some things that they would like to do in the future, and like you indicated, they're gonna prioritize their list and submit it, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Update on the Beecher Rec and 4th of July. We're going to talk about a new concession stand, new car stand, and storage issues. And that meeting will be set up with village president, myself, I believe, and then the other members. So we'll keep you posted on when that meeting takes place. I also wanted to say that, remember we talked about the railroad? I met another gentleman over the weekend who comes to Beecher quite often to view trains. So, it's kind of amazing after you hear that, to then bring it up. And this gentleman was in Griffith I think it was over the weekend. They had a big railroad and train show up there. So he says, oh yeah, we come down to Beecher all the time. So I just wanted to throw that in. That ends my report.
And would you continue on with the planning, building, and zoning committee?
Yes, both the building department monthly report and also the code enforcement monthly report is enclosed for your review. And then the next item would be results of the September 26th PZC meeting. The meeting was kicked off with new terms of each of the members and allowed the village president to discuss with them his expectations of the group and their expectations of the village board. Do you want to add anything to that?
Basically, the one thing that we did discuss that night primarily was the process of how things get referred to them. We discussed this before, and we brought up in committee to make a recommendation to try and streamline that process. I think they were pretty much in agreement, if I remember that night, that one step where someone comes before us, briefs us, and then we give the authorization, or we refer it to the planning and zoning, is a step maybe that's not needed. It maybe gives an impression of whether we will or will not approve something, well, then why we even refer it to them. So the process will be worked on in the future at committee, and then we'll present something to the village board later.
Okay, the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 29th. And I know the village board is invited to go to that as well. That ends the report of the Planning, Building, and Zoning Committee.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Mr. Coleman.
Police Department monthly report for September is enclosed for your review. Consider an ordinance authorizing the village president and clerk to sign an agreement with Teamsters Local 700 for a 5-year collective bargaining agreement retroactive to May 1st, 2013. Enclosed is a copy of the agreement and a synopsis of the highlights. This agreement was the subject of an executive session held last June and is now ready for ratification. No changes have been made to this since the agreement in June, since that meeting in June. We recommend that we approve this agreement. I'd like to make an ordinance authorizing the president and clerk to sign an agreement with the Teamsters Local Union for a 5-year collective bargaining agreement retroactive to May 2013.
Second.
Motion on the floor and second, it's ordinance number 1197. I have one question, if I can. Is the bargaining unit ratified?
Yes, they have.
Officially?
Yes.
I have one additional question, or at least a comment. This ordinance includes the participation agreement in the Teamsters Health Insurance Plan. So can we make sure that whoever made that motion, whoever seconded it, agree to add that to their motion?
Yeah. That was the
Yeah, but it has to be in the minutes that we also approve the participation in the Teamsters Health Plan. As part of the motion.
That's not in the collective bargaining agreement?
It is, but it's a separate document that the mayor and clerk have to sign.
It's an addendum to the,
It's an
It's an
addendum.
addendum to the
Yeah.
agreement? Okay.
I consider it part of the agreement, but being it's an
In
addendum,
order
but
to remove any ambiguities, let's make sure it's in the
Okay.
minutes that we.
to include a,
Motion, a second?
Yeah. Put it on the motion.
Yes.
The amendments are made. Does anybody have any questions on what we're voting on? Roll call.
Okay, I didn't clarify.
See, you got a question?
We're approving the ordinance and agreeing to sign the addendum pertaining to the participation of the Teamsters Health Insurance Plan.
Yes. Correct. And it's ordinance 1197.
For more clarification, it'd be appendix A. Just trying to make it factual.
yep.
Any other clarification? Vote for roll call. Roll call.
Bailey?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
Rose?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Thank you.
Don't put Brian and I in the same room.
Just say.
Consider a motion creating the position of permanent part-time police officer and granting the police chief the authority to classify certain current part-time officers to the position of permanent part-time. This change in status, which is allowed by our personnel manual and is practiced by most surrounding communities, is taking advantage of an Illinois State Police Training Board ruling that police officers can work up to 1,560 hours per calendar year and not be considered full-time status. This is below the threshold eligible for benefits for all except for one IMRF. The village would require to pay its 12% share of IMRF pension on those officers who work over 1,000 hours. The permanent part-time officer would also have to pay 4.5% into the fund. Chief, you wanna,
Each year, we have about 3 or 4 officers that peak at 1,000 hours around October or November. Once they get up to those 1,000 hours, we have to take them off the roster. So what that's doing, that's reducing the availability of part-time officers to fill shifts, especially coming into the holiday season. By state statute, they can work 1560. However, under IMRF, if they work over 1,000, they're entitled to pension benefits. So I'm proposing that I'd look at maybe 3 or 4 that would be permanent part-time. We'd work them to 1560, get the benefit of that officer. I also think it adds an incentive to retain the officers, because we do have a turnover in part-time. Part of it is our own fault, because we train them so well, they're snatched up by other departments to work full-time. But also, if there's a benefit to stay here part-time, I think a lot of them would take advantage of that.
okay,
Chief, the IMRF, is it only the hours worked over 1,000, or does it have to go back to the beginning?
It's the entire amount.
So there's no guarantee, I mean, a guy can work under 1,000 hours, there's no guarantee he's gonna get 1560. We don't know how we're gonna be needing part-time. We're just saying that we're gonna allocate certain people to get into that point.
That's correct. The way IMRF looks at it, if you go over 1,000 this year, that's not a problem with them. They say you have to look at the position. If this is something continual, then they're eligible for pension, and you should be allocating that money, because that should be a pension position.
So they should be expecting to see 1560 every year.
Yes.
Okay.
We will probably implement this January 1st, Brian, so it's not retro to January 1 last year. Is that correct, Jeff? This would be effective January?
Or, I mean, that's something we need to discuss. We can also start at May 1st with the new budget year.
I think January 1 will be fine.
Okay.
We'll work out the details and bring that back to the board later.
Okay.
Because we have to move money around now that we have a police contract, labor agreement, so we're gonna need to move some money anyway.
All right.
I just wanted to clarify, because it's on anybody who works over 1,000. Is there expectations that these permanent part-timers are gonna be the first ones that are always gonna be there? So they're gonna hit the 1560?
It has been pretty much the same group of officers year after year.
So we're gonna start out paying IMRF with the full thought that they're gonna be there.
Yes.
They're gonna understand that also, because there's payment by us and by them. I'm not against this, I just wanna make sure that
Absolutely.
everybody understands it. I mean, we're saying we're guaranteeing, we're gonna be paying in the IMRF right out of the box.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, kind of, I just want to clarify what Brian said. If they only work 900 hours in a year, we're still paying in that IMRF.
Yes, we are.
Once you designate them that position.
Once you designate them as that title.
Correct.
Our expectation is to get above the 1,000.
There's some that due to their other employment, there's no way they can work more than 1,000 hours a year, but they're high-quality part-timers. There's other part-timers that look at this as almost full-time employment. If you can't give them 1560, they'll go to a department that'll give them that, and we lose the availability of hiring part-timers because of that situation. And they're usually the younger ones that are trying to get their ropes so they can go full-time somewhere down the road. So hiring part-timers is getting more and more difficult because of the training requirements. They have to have the training almost equal to a full-time officer. So if you got that much invested in them, you might as well give them the 12% pension. Because you're investing a lot of money in these guys in training.
I'm letting them walk out the door.
Yeah.
Now, another point of clarification, what happens if we get above 5,000 in village population? We then go down to downstate pension, what happens to
The
these guys?
permanent part-time officer is IMRF.
You'll always be IMRF.
1560.
Yes.
Over 1560, downstate pension.
Right.
If we were over 5,000. That was a concern I had, and the chief cleared that up for me right away.
So our regular police officer would be downstate pension at that point?
Yes,
Permanent part-timers will only go to IMRF?
that's correct.
Okay.
And those under 1,000 would not get pension.
Right. Okay.
okay, I'd like to make a motion creating the position of, excuse me, permanent part-time police officer and granting the police chief the authority to classify certain current part-time officers to the position of permanent part-time.
Second.
Motion on the floor and a second. Any questions of the motion? Roll call.
Cleary.
Yes.
Meyer. Yes.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Whalen.
Yes. Consider a motion granting, excuse me, consider a motion granting holiday pay to any part-time employee scheduled or called out to work on a legal village holiday. This will only affect the police department since it is the only department having part-time employees. The incentive of holiday pay for a part-timer is still less than full-time wage of an officer and will allow the chief to use more part-time officers on holidays in lieu of paying overtime rates to the officers on forced call-outs on holidays. I'd like to make a motion granting the holiday pay to any part-time employee scheduled or called out to work on a legal village holiday.
Second.
The motion on the floor and second.
Can I just explain this quickly? If a full-timer would like to have the Christmas day off, it's gonna be easier to fill that shift with that part-timer at the holiday pay rate. So it's good for both the full-timer and the part-timer,
When would you execute this?
probably immediately. It's not gonna be a significant impact on the budget, really.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call.
Whalen.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Gross.
Yes.
Meyer. Yes. Cleary.
Yes.
Consider an ordinance increasing the number of part-time police officers on the roster from 12 to 15. The lag between when an officer is appointed and when he is trained to work the street can be close to a year, requiring that more officers be on the roster during training processes. Even though we may go to 15 officers, there may only be 12 practicing part-timers available for shift duty. For example, there are currently several officers on hiring lists for full-time elsewhere, and we need to begin training for these replacements, and this requires additional officers on the roster. Comments, Chief?
Previous ordinance allowed me to have 12. To make a long story short, right now I'm at 8. Out of those 8, only 7 are active because we have 1. The reason for going to 15 is I want 2 spots to sanction as what I call seasonal part-time. Those will be officers that are retired in good standing from another department that fill in little gaps that we need. They don't work regular shifts, but they can come and work special detail like the 4th of July or cover shifts that need to be filled and when someone's either away at training for extended time or on sick leave. By having that roster, if I hire a couple officers that go away to training, it's theoretically, it's like 9 months by the time they're done being trained and they have their field training before they actually hit the street. But it's when I lose officers, and I've lost out of the part-timers 3 this year. They went full-time to other departments. I'm gonna lose another part-timer this month. So by getting me up to 15 doesn't mean I'm gonna have 15 all the time, but it gives me that flexibility that I can add them to the roster, have them on the roster, so if one does leave, I'm not scrambling to fill that spot.
Chief, the labor contract doesn't put a limit on how many part-timers you can have.
No, it does not. What it does, it addresses that we will follow state statute with the use of part-timers.
Okay.
The reason why the ordinance specifies an exact number is we didn't want a situation where the chief could have 100 or 200 badges floating around out there. There's a limitation to the number of badges that can be issued.
We create that limit. There's no limit by state law.
No.
There is none. We create it by
We
ordinance.
create our limit.
But the question was raised, why do we have the ordinance at all? And that's the answer, because, you know, there's some communities where there's 200 badges floating around.
I just want to make sure there was nothing buried in that contract that would get us, okay.
No.
Okay, I'd like to make an ordinance increasing the number of part-time police officers to the roster from 12 to 15.
Second.
Motion on the floor and second. Any questions?
Ordinance number?
Ordinance
I'm sorry, 1198. Roll call.
Cleary.
Yes.
Meyer. Yes. Gross.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Whalen.
Yes. Mosquito abatement program update. Buddy, you wanna complete this thing for us?
Well, I actually thought I was done, but we received a few requests that we still spray, so I'm gonna spray 2 more times, and that'll be it for the year. And I think that has to do with the extra weather we've been having. It's been a little warmer than usual.
Now, if we have a big frost, then
If we have a frost between now and then, I'm done. I mean, it will kill everything, so. But you can, 2 more, Thursday, weather permitting, and then that.
Okay. This coming Thursday?
Yes, sir.
Update on school safety and security. Chief?
We're still working on this, the school safety audit. That document should be available shortly. Just fine tuning it, that will be presented to you to look at. I just want to thank the entire village board, I mean, for your unwavering support and commitment towards the safety of our schools and our community. Without it, we could not do what we do as far as training, as far as our drills, everything that we put forth towards school safety. And I know I talked with you, Mr. Kuhlman, earlier about extending that to the other schools, the private schools, and also the daycare centers. That's coming up. First, we want to get this school safety audit done, completed, presented. It'll be a document you can review. Special thanks to my chairman, Ron Kuhlman, my co-chairman, Jonathan Kapuros, the entire village board. You've been great, and I thank you.
Yeah, I'd also like to echo the comments of the chief. Thank you, board, for supporting our need over here. We just don't know when it's gonna pay off, and we pray that it never will pay off, that we have to use it. But look around, you can see what's going on. Thank you, board members. Any questions of the chief or myself? Next request for a closed session to discuss the appointment of 5 part-time police recruits.
3 or 5?
3 or 5?
5.
There's 5.
Oh,
I have 3, but they have changed apparently.
Yeah.
that's apparently.
Second. We'll just do request. That's right, I'm sorry.
Any questions of the chief or myself? Please do my report.
Public Works Committee, trustee first.
Water Department and Sewer Department monthly reports are enclosed for your review. Buddy, status of the hitch and plow on the F-800?
It's been ordered. I just received an email today. I'm waiting for Wausau to get back to Linco when it'll be delivered, and we're off and running. They told me we should have everything back by the 2nd week of November.
You got the hitch figured out? for
It's,
when you want?
everything is all figured out. It's ready to roll. So just waiting for a phone call.
Status of salt supply for the winter. The village has pre-ordered 300 tons and has about 600 tons in stock for a total of 900 tons, or a 2-year average of winter supply. The price of salt came down by $7.30 per ton to $52.66 per ton this year. Status of tree trimming and removal program. Second tree trimming list was developed and enclosed for your review. Tree trimming and removals will be completed by the end of this week, and all stumps grown and restored by Thanksgiving. But it seems on track still.
Oh, let's hope so.
If they don't get it done by the end of this week, there's no leaves on the trees, so don't know where you're trimming.
Anyway.
Yeah, so.
It's an ongoing process.
Status of Parkway tree planting program. They've been contacted by IDOT asking if we would like to take, like any of the trees off the airport property, to replace dying ash trees in the parkway. Buddy, are you gonna go take a look at that?
I've had a couple conversations with him, and yes, I have to go with him, but I know he's got ash trees he's trying to unload. And I know there's some oak trees in there, but what we have to do with the trees that we're gonna get, if they're parkway trees, they have to be like our accepted ones, so it's gonna be hand-picked. And if we don't get them in this, this fall, we also can plant them in the spring.
Yeah.
That's the 2 times of the year, so you know, we have a couple other projects out there right now that are taking priority on that.
But make sure you don't put those near the Edison lines.
Yeah,
It's outlawed parkway now.
I think that problem's been taken care of. I think she's happy.
I'm just saying in general.
Yeah.
Sooner or later.
Well, I know
we're not
exactly what
gonna
you're
try
talking
again.
about.
Leaf collection program began last Tuesday and will last through the Thanksgiving week. We're now thinking Monday, December 2nd, buddy. 7 a.m. will be the deadline for having leaves out on the parkway. We say this
You know,
every year, and we set a
we
date.
always set this every year, but, you know, if you remember last year, we went way past Christmas picking up leaves, so, it's gonna be what it is, it's gonna be.
The season pretty much dictates it, the weather.
That's
If
right.
they drop, they drop. We can put all the dates on it we want, but if they don't drop
Well,
by then.
we tentatively like to tell them, this is it, this is what we're gonna do, and sometimes you get stragglers, but sounds good to me. Okay,
Status of
Sidewalk.
sidewalk replacement.
I have two areas that we will, get done this year. One is up on Ash Street, in that area that we took out those couple squares, and on Route 1, where we had that main break. By, in between Miller and Orchard.
And I got a big comment on your job well done on front of Hack.
Oh, that
Happy
one's
with
pretty
that.
smoothly, that worked real
Yeah, that
well.
went very well, and there was some good coordination there and went off without a hitch. Status of the Elm Street water main replacement.
You know, it's, we've already got probably 2 sticks of pipe in, tied in. We have a valve, they're up and running. Right now, this week, we are locating service lines and gas lines. And Scotty will be in here starting Monday of next week, and we should be rocking and rolling on that. I would anticipate that main would be put in, backfilled, and cooked, and possibly online within start of the next 2 weeks. Actually, 2 weeks from that point. Because I got to cook it for 2 to 3 days, and then flush it real well before I can put it online. But it's actually going pretty smoothly.
And we had another main break there.
Yes, we did
Just
over there. So, but that's, you
recently
know
over
what?
the last 2 weeks, which,
That's to be expected. I mean, when you're turning that piece of the main off and on, and it is in the condition that it is, it's, you know, gonna crack and fall apart, so.
yeah. All right, status of, the Ash Street. Bob, you wanna give an update on that? Do you want to, or maybe we should let the mayor?
It's fixed, next time.
True,
But
right?
do you wanna do it, or do you want me to? It's up to you. Any one of us.
I think it's good.
I have not heard from the homeowner. We believe there was a dig done in the front yard, which their sewer service in the front yard, correct,
Correct.
was overdug underneath, backfilled with stone, and the water was traveling through the stone into their footing,
Underneath the pipe.
underneath the pipe,
Because they compromised
compromised.
the trench of
Right.
the,
Yeah, there was actually 2 areas of infiltration. One was when they did the overdig on the foundation, they compromised the structural integrity of our storm that went in between the 2 properties, so any water that was following that trench line was actually dumping into it. We took care of that. When the plumbers did their sanitary service for that house, they literally dug down to the same elevation of our sanitary main and just backfilled 2.5 feet and made up the elevation distance with stone, which is kind of a big no-no.
there were some areas that was actually 3 to 4 feet.
Yes, it was.
Over the dig of
Well, and you were there,
stone underneath.
and what we did was we had clay. We actually used clay from another subdivision, and it was all packed around it, and the problem there is solved. Since then, we've gone back. Restoration has been done in our front yard, so that's done. The only other thing we have to do is fix the sidewalk in front and visit our taillights.
And my last comment on that would be, again, as we were confident, we went above and beyond. This was not village water. Our system is secure, there are no leaks, this was not village water. That was their issue.
And just one more comment, thanks to our crack
Well, thank you, I resemble that comment.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
The status of clarifier tank painting at the sewer plant. After a meeting the administrator and superintendent had with the sewer plant operator, it was decided this project could be deferred until the next fiscal year when the committee and the board can discuss the merits of doing this project in-house or with an engineer. It's best to do this project in the summer anyway. Less complicated time to take the clarifier out of service. Instead, the sewer operator is going to focus on replacing 2 valves in the orbital pit, which we already purchased last year and never got installed, and to replace the rubber gaskets and all the weirs of the 2 clarifiers. And that's about it. Buddy, did you want to add anything to that?
No, everything's, you know,
Wait until next year.
pretty much in black and white.
What's the status of the aerator and that bypass pond? I know we had one that was working and the other one, the motor burned out. We have to-
Bob, I've been waiting for the manufacturer of the motor. Like I said, they've had some employee turnover. I haven't gotten an email back for the cost or any, price on it, and it is pretty specific to that.
But we'll get that done this fiscal year.
Oh, yes, we will. Like I said, I have it all ripped apart and ready to, it just needs to be, I just need to get the motor and put it back in place, and it's a Reliance motor. And I don't understand what the big deal is, because they're right out of South Holland. But I will investigate a little more within this week.
All right, buddies, update on the SCADA upgrades.
Oh, well, this is rather interesting. Lo and behold, this morning about 9:02, I come in, Stephen calls me and says, I don't understand, all the wells are, they're running, everything's, way out of whack. Well, I go down and I check out the SCADA system, and communication for the whole village is knocked out. I do a little more investigating and troubleshooting, and it turns out that the main PLC, which is the old Mitacon, which was like the original one that we put in, and we've been replacing them, it kind of blew up on the comm lines. So I got them to come down from Milwaukee. They did some hard wiring and actually was able to do some computer programming reconfiguration, and off the table top computer we have down there, it's running the SCADA system right now. So your upgrade is going to be the replacement and the upgrade of that central computer at the sewer plant. Dollar amount, I don't know, I don't have that right now today. I have I gave them 3 instructions that I wanted, and they will be getting back to me within the next couple days. It'll be the upgrade of the central computer. It'll be also a solid number for the communication for the all the wells speaking, so we're fine tuning that, and also as directed, the programming price for what it's going to cost them, cradle to grave, as far as our SCADA system is concerned with the programming of the variable drives at well 5, or excuse me, booster station.
All right. Village advised by the Illinois Department of Agriculture that ash borer was found in the village. You do not need the state to tell us this, but it makes it official. The village will then had to enter in a compliance agreement that we would not ship any wood outside of the county. We've never done this anyway. The agreement also makes us eligible for grant funds if they become available down the road. The letter is enclosed for your review. And the last item, consider authorizing the village president and clerk to sign a 2-year lease agreement with Lang Excavating for the storage of their large tractor in our old garage in exchange for working on the Elm Street water main project. This was brought up last month, kind of got everyone's consensus on this. Lang has agreed to dig and trench backfill this. The proposal's enclosed there in our package for your review. So I'll go ahead and make a motion authorizing the village president and clerk to sign a 2-year lease agreement with Lang Excavating for the storage of the large tractor in our old garage in exchange for working on the Elm Street water main project.
Second.
Motion on the floor and second. Any questions to the motion? Roll call.
Whalen?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
LaBrus?
Yes.
Yes. Serena?
Yes.
That concludes my report.
Thank you. Economic Development, Trustee Meyer.
Fall newsletter will be mailed this week. All board members should have received a copy for review electronically at this time. Our Nixle Twitter website update, it's not easy to say. The village has been promoting the Nixle application on its website and in the newsletter. Donna Rooney, our new billing clerk, will also be trained on website updates so we can place more timely information on the site as it becomes available. YouTube continues to offer all the board meetings on video archived in the last year, And the committee will continue to discuss policies regarding the use of Twitter and a website overhaul. Rail viewing platform update. The Union Pacific is willing to consider a lease of property for the rail platform. We're continuing to negotiate the terms of a lease by expanding our current lease on the east side of the tracks to include this parcel at no additional charge. The lease may require an architectural rendering of the platform, and we may have to have Mike Stanula draw this up for us. More information will be provided as it becomes available. We have a couple of new businesses in town. Bacon for You opened October 1st at 759 Penfield, and the Stamp and Coin Store was set to open on Gould Street this week. Dollar General continues its pledge to open November 1st in Rising's building, and the village president has asked the chamber to consider reestablishing ribbon cuttings for new businesses. Welcome baskets are making a comeback. The Chamber of Commerce has formed a committee to jumpstart the Welcome Basket program for new residents once again. The village president has agreed to deliver those baskets to about 50 new residents per year. And update on economic development consultant. The committee has received a proposal to provide economic development consulting services and has yet had the opportunity to discuss the proposal. It's not in the current budget, and the strategic planning process of the village board is not yet complete, so this is being put on hold for now. And that concludes my report.
Brian had a surprise, one of the comments that you made, Marcy, you had a surprise, what was that, in the lease of the railroad property?
Yeah, seeing that we had the one along the Lions Park, and then we had the one where the current depot's at, and all we did was extend it to include the memorial that we had in our, I mean, that, to do that at no additional cost is kind of shocking.
If I can explain that, they first said no. I then recontacted them and said, how can you say no when we're already doing it? And then finally, we had a discussion after that, which basically they said, well, okay, maybe, if you can mitigate the safety concerns that they have.
Well, that's the big issue.
Which we already done. And then I said, well, I know we're talking about a lease, but what are our chances of trying to just include it in our current leases at no additional cost? And they just simply said, certainly include that in your presentation when you're ready to give.
You just paid $1,700.
$1,770.
Yeah.
I tried to get into the cost of the property of what it would be at the end of the lease. I didn't get that in yet, so if and when we decide to go ahead on this project, then that would be my suggestion, is to include these thoughts in there, either to include it in our current lease, renegotiate the lease, or do something to try and mitigate these.
Are we to the point now where we should have a site plan?
Pardon?
Are we to the point now where we should draw up a site plan?
No, if you remember the discussion, and this actually hasn't been brought to the committee yet, our suggestion was we wanted to wait and see what our new planner had to say about this idea. And we were going to present it to him and then go on from there. And if he thought it was a good idea, then possibly we could decide whether or not we want to proceed with the lease.
It's part of overall downtown.
Correct. Ron, do you have a question?
Yeah, any news on UP as far as parking along Woodward Street there?
I have.
Always on time.
And I would say at the very least in contact with them once a month. I received a list of, does everybody know what we're talking about? By the way? The trains parking or staging behind Woodward. We've been in constant contact with the railroad, of which the basic response is that they have a lot of new engineers who, for whatever reason, can't read signs and decide to park there anyways, which I don't understand, but anyways, they claim it's marked, they claim they're on top of it. I had one list of approximately 25 trains, which I encourage that individual to continue, it's a resident that gave us a list of trains that continue to park there, the times, and they have a phone number to report it to Union Pacific. She reported them, and then she gave me the list of which then I forwarded on to my contact. Since that time, I've had another complaint of the same thing, of which I encouraged her to do the same thing, to continue to call it in, give me the list at least once a month, and I will continue to forward it on to them. Hopefully we'll get some results. If this does not work, we had another thought that we seem to have gotten some results by talking to the Federal Railway Administration on another rail problem that was there, that was resolved by them. Maybe this is an issue we could bring forward to them, but I'd like to at least give UP one more month to see if we can resolve it.
It's amazing.
The only other option that UP has is to put a signal further down that they've got a stop sign.
They have a sign.
No. They put a light, they can't proceed past that light without it being the right color. That's the other option right now, they're using signage and training to make these guys do the right thing. And that's usually the first course of action anybody does.
So like I said, I think if this doesn't work, then I think my next step would be call the Federal Highway, the Railway Administration. So we have a contact there, so.
Thank you.
Okay, Ilion Expressway update. Probably the most important thing is this Thursday at 3 p.m., the MPO, which stands for,
Metropolitan Planning Organization.
yes, will take a vote, and it is the binding vote whether or not to fund the Ilion Expressway. There have been 2 other meetings which have been quite interesting. The first one, the Transportation Committee did pass it, but it was very obvious that the Chicago votes abstained. And then the very next day, I believe it was, Mayor Emanuel came out and voted and said he was not in favor of the project. So now what they're suspecting is going to happen, or in fact, the Chicago voters have no longer abstained, and they said no. So today, I had a meeting with 25 other mayors. The governor was there. They are optimistic that this Thursday, they think the vote will pass. It is still close. All we can do is see what happens. We suspect that a lot of mayors will be there in support of the project. A lot of others will be there probably against the project, but this is the most critical vote. I did get the impression that if this vote failed and the project was not approved, that the state intends to take other alternatives to try and revive this project. I don't know what that is yet.
Technically, if they move it 3 miles further south, they're outside of the CMAP jurisdiction, but then it's in Kankakee County. And that's one of the options.
I will say that the governor was not happy at all about the CMAP. And it just so happens this week there are a lot of meetings going on for other things that involve Mayor Emanuel, of which there's considerable discussion has been taking place apparently. So we'll see what happens on Thursday. South Suburban Airport update.
Is it Thursday, this Thursday?
No, it's October.
It's
October
wrong.
17th.
You got October 17th.
Yeah,
Okay, it's this Thursday, 3 o'clock. South Suburban Airport, I also learned today that the state just bought 200 more acres last week. I don't know where the property is, maybe somebody knows, but they apparently did buy 200 acres, and that project is apparently still moving as it has been in the past. Really haven't learned anything new. We also did discuss, Mayor Farquhar of Mooney did bring up the development things that we're trying to do so that the governor is aware of it. There's a lot of other senators and representatives in the room as well. So that was brought up there. Will County Governmental League Legislative Briefing. Don't really have anything additional to bring up. Can you think of anything about?
Friday morning, of all the speakers, I was most impressed with Troy Hutchinson. They must have had 15 legislators there, and the words that she had to say made me believe that she was really in tune with what was going on. LG Sims did show up. I give him a lot of credit for coming all the way out to Crest Hill to meet with the Will County mayors, even though he only represents Beecher, I believe, in that district. But we were happy to see him there, and he also spoke. And
Getting into one comment that Toy Hutchinson mentioned, and I think she's right on it, and I don't know if other, we always hear about, in fact, within the last 2 weeks, I ran into a resident, both of them brought up, are we gonna be able to do anything about our taxes? And then obviously that I point out, I said, which portion of the tax bill are you referring to? Because we only have 1/6 of, or 1/10 of 10 other items on our 10 other taxing bodies on the bill. And the $8,000 tax bill, ours is only about $500 of that bill. And at that discussion, and even today, she brought up the fact that the funding mechanism for the schools is part of the problem, because the majority of the tax bill does go to the school. So Toy Hutchinson has brought up before, I've heard it before, and I've heard it again with her, that I get the impression she feels, and I agree, that the only way that we are gonna get true tax relief is the whole taxing system has to be revised, has to be revamped. And I get the impression that that seems to be a goal of hers during her term. Didn't you get that impression? Yeah. And I think that's encouraging, because I think that is one of our problems, is our taxing system is wrong, is broken. And that needs to be repaired, and it's some encouraging words. I did meet with State Rep Kate Clunan, nothing really new there. She came out and just visited with us. Planning workshop update, next one is October 28th at 6:30 here. Make sure you bring everything with us. I'd also like to make some appointments to the Youth Commission to replace some that have resigned. I'd like to ask someone to make a motion to appoint Jeanette Chose, replacing J.R. Delgado, who has resigned due to time restraints, and Terry Casput, replacing Missy Sipple, also who resigned due to time constraints. This would be for the Beecher Youth Commission.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
There's a motion made and second. Any questions on the motion? Roll call.
Clary,
Yes.
Meyer. Yes. Rose.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Whalen.
Yes.
Also, on the 4th of July Commission, Bob Howard had resigned due to personal reasons, and in his place, I'd like to appoint Barbara Hargett, who has already been the deputy treasurer for that, or co-treasurer for that group. Now I'd like to actually appoint her as a commissioner, which then give her voting status. Someone would make that motion.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion made and a second. Any questions to the motion? Roll call.
Whalen.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Meyer. Yes. Clary.
Yes.
And we need someone to make a motion to change the time of the November 12th meeting to 7:15.
So moved.
Second.
And is there a roll call?
Clary.
Yes.
Meyer. Yes. Rose.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Whalen.
Yes.
And can I ask someone to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel?
So moved. Second.
Motion being second. Roll call.
Whalen.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Meyer. Yes.
Yes.